Welcome to the Phoenix Seminar on the Psychology of Achievement. Have you ever wondered why some people are more successful than others? Why some people earn more money, are happier, have better jobs, better relationships, better health, and seem to get far more out of life? Well, when I was 15 years old, this question began to preoccupy me. I've spent over 25 years. I've traveled in over 80 countries. I've worked at 30 different jobs, and I've spent, by my own estimate, about 30,000 hours in study to try to find the answer to why some people are more successful than others. And you know something? I have found that this is one of the most studied subjects in the world, that there's more information available on it today than has ever been available before, and that today we can say with complete confidence that success is as predictable as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. Today you can be more successful faster than you ever dreamed possible if you will do two basic things. Number one, make a decision to exceed all your previous levels of accomplishment. Make a decision to be successful and to achieve your goals, whatever you construe them to be. And number two, learn how. This seminar has been assembled in order to teach you how. Since we put it together several years ago, over 150,000 men and women have been through this seminar in one form or another, and many of them have said it's like getting a brand new chance at life. One gentleman said to us it was like getting a blank check on the future. We're going to teach you in the next few hours some of the most important things that have ever been found, that have been discovered and rediscovered, that go back 4,000 years into history, science, religion, metaphysics, psychology, philosophy, and all esoteric fields of study have come to the conclusion that we are going to talk about in this seminar. If you will just use some of the things you learn in this seminar, it can dramatically change your results for the better. Now, in studying the subject of success, one of the things we have to do is put some preconceptions aside. One of the things that I began thinking was that in order to be successful, you had to be especially intelligent, or you had to have a great education, or you had to be terrific looking, or you had to have contacts, or you had to have luck. Do you know that these items have been examined thoroughly, and there's no correlation at all between success and intelligence, education, luck, contacts, and appearance? They are helpful in some cases, but there's no direct correlation. Success is based on other things. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about what we mean by success. When we look at the difference between animals and human beings, we find that animals have what is called a survival instinct. Animals work to get enough to eat, a place to sleep, to reproduce their species, and then they either hibernate and or die. Human beings have what you might call a success instinct. A success instinct means that human beings are driven internally to succeed, that it is as natural for you to be a success and to want to be a success as it is for you to breathe in and breathe out. That success, the drive to be and have and do and more, to fulfill your potential as a human being, is an absolutely essential part of your being. That we never are satisfied as long as we're alive. We always want to have more. We always want to be more. We always want to do more. The question, of course, is why is it that so few people achieve things in life? Let's talk about what the success instinct embraces. Now, I have looked at this for years and years, and in my estimation, success can be broken down and put under 7 categories. There are 7 ingredients of success, and if you have these 7, everything you could ever want in life can be put under one of these categories. So let's look at what we're talking about. Number 1, starting point of success, top of the hit parade throughout all of human history, is peace of mind. Peace of mind means that you feel content, at peace, relaxed inside. Peace of mind to a great degree means freedom. It means freedom especially from fear. Freedom from fear, freedom from stress, freedom from anxiety, freedom from want, freedom from lack, freedom from negative emotions, freedom from guilt, and so on. But peace of mind is the first and most important ingredient of success. Why? It's because if you get anything else in life and you don't get your peace of mind, you won't even enjoy it. Number 2 ingredient of success, health and energy. Health and energy. Health means that we have the health, we are freed from sickness, freedom from disease, freedom from pain, freedom from ailments, and so on, but also energy. We mean vitality. And today we know, as a result of exhaustive research in medicine or psychology, that there's a very close correlation between peace of mind and health and energy. Is that 80 to 90% of all the ailments that the human body suffers, including most of the reasons why we die before our time, have to do with disrupted peace of mind. Psychosomatic medicine is based on the discovery that psycho, the mind, makes soma, the body, sick. So therefore, as we strive for higher levels of peace of mind, we almost automatically have better levels of health and energy. Now, the third ingredient of success is loving relationships. Loving relationships means that we have the ability, the capacity to enter into long-term loving relationships with other men and women. It means that we have the ability to give of ourselves, to love, and to be loved. And the ability to enter into loving relationships is an essential part of being human. It is the one essential characteristic of our humanhood. And when we look at loving relationships, you'll find that almost all of the problems you have in life, about 80%, 85% of our problems in life, as they say, talk back. That 85% of all the success you'll ever enjoy in life is going to be determined by how well you get along with other people. The quality and quantity of our relationships is the true mark of how well you're doing as a human being. And as you know, that problems within your relationships, starting from early childhood all the way up through our adult lives, disrupt our health and energy, disrupt our peace of mind. If our loving relationships are stable, usually our health and energy is stable and we have great peace of mind. Now, how do you measure loving relationships? Well, one of the simplest measures that you can use is simply this. It is to ask yourself how much you laugh with another person. How much do you laugh? Because you'll find that the first thing that enters into a happy relationship is laughter, and the first thing that leaves when the relationship starts to go sour is the laughter. Laughter, because it is a completely spontaneous expression of life, is the true mark of a healthy personality and a healthy relationship, as you know from your own experience. Now, number 4 ingredient of success is financial freedom. Financial freedom means that you have enough money so that you don't worry about money. Now, some people have a tendency to say, well, success is just simply a matter of money and they're not interested in money. But the fact of the matter is that money is important. It takes money to buy clothes and books and to go to school and buy medical attention and to travel and to have all the good things in life. And every one of us, in order to be a success, has to reach the point where we know we have the capacity to earn enough money so that we don't worry about money. We have to reach the point where we can turn our minds to other things, higher things, to our relationships, to our health, to the improvement of our minds, to the expansion of our emotional and our spiritual life. But we all have to have the ability to earn more money. And the great majority of people, unfortunately, don't earn enough by their own estimation. In this course, you're going to learn how you can earn virtually all the money that you want in the course of your lifetime if you're willing to make the efforts and to pay the necessary price. Now, the 5th ingredient of success is worthy goals and ideals. Worthy goals and ideals. Sometimes when we talk about ideals, we mean values. And we know that values really lie at the core of the human being. What your values are determines almost everything that happens to you. Worthy goals and ideals are what give us a sense of meaning and purpose. Dr. Viktor Frankl, the founder of logotherapy, concluded after a lifetime of research that we as human beings need meaning and purpose. We need significance. You need to know that you're doing something that's important. You need to know when you get up in the morning why you're getting up. You need to believe in what you're doing. You need commitment. You need involvement. You need dedication. You need excitement in life. So therefore, worthy goals and ideals are critical. And worthy goals and ideals, of course, that are consistent with your values. What we have found, unfortunately, is probably 80% or more of people have little or no values. They have no sense of direction. They just wander. They do whatever someone else wants them to do. And this is a major problem that contributes to unhappiness. The 6th ingredient of success is self-knowledge, self-understanding. Self-knowledge, self-understanding. What does this mean? Well, it means that you know and understand who you are, why you do the things you do, what makes you tick. It also means that you have self-honesty. It also means that you have the character and the courage to face yourself honestly and squarely. As Shakespeare said, warts and all. You have the honesty to face your strengths and the weaknesses. You have the honesty, if you like, and the integrity to look into yourself to fully understand why you do what you do. What makes you tick? And in this seminar, by the way, we're going to give you an enormous amount of information on why you are the way you are and how you can change it in a very positive way if you're not happy with it. Now, the 7th ingredient of success is really a result, and it is a sense of personal fulfillment. It is a sense of personal fulfillment, what Abraham Maslow called self-actualization. Self-actualization is the feeling that you are becoming everything that you're capable of becoming. Self-actualization means that you feel every single day that you're moving toward the fulfillment of your inherent possibilities. And self-actualization comes as a result of having worthy goals and ideals, having loving relationships, having a high degree of self-knowledge and self-understanding, which generates health and energy, peace of mind, loving relationships, and so on. Now, the interesting thing is, the tragedy is the great majority of men and women today achieve so little. On a score of 1 to 10 in terms of human potential, the average person is functioning at far, far below what they're capable of. On a score of 1 to 10, the average person is scoring perhaps 2 or 3 on most of these scales. 84% of people working today are underemployed in that their jobs do not fully tax their abilities and their potential. 80% would rather be doing something else. In a study of married couples, what we found was that 38% of married couples would rather be married to someone else. We've also found that the great majority of people in our society, after a lifetime of well-paid work, retire broke. They retire poor, they retire on pensions. Only 1% become wealthy, only 5% become financially independent, 15% have some savings, and 80% are dependent on others. The average savings, lifetime savings of a retired couple in America or Canada today is less than $60,000. That's after earning between $500,000 and $1 million in an average working lifetime. Well, why is this? The number one reason is that we come into this world without an instruction manual. You can go through your entire education and never be taught anything about success. I personally believe that there should be a course on success in every single grade level, in every single school, in every single college and university. We come into the world like a computer. If you can imagine a computer, imagine that you bought this beautiful, sophisticated computer and you took it home. And you took it out of the box and you set it up, but you had no instruction manual. That you had to figure out how to work out this computer all by yourself. Or imagine a combination lock, being given a beautiful combination lock that is on a box that contains everything that you'd ever want, but you don't know the combination. We come into the world with no instruction manual, and we spend our whole lives trying to figure out how to do things right. Well, the key to success is, first of all, what we call understanding, learning how to do things right. And this course is an instruction manual on success. You'll be able to get more out of yourself as a result of this course that you could possibly dream of today. The second ingredient is E, which requires effort. There are many people, as you know, lifelong students who study and study and study, but they never make the necessary or the correct efforts. The middle point is a multiplication sign, and understanding multiplied times effort equals results. In this course, what we're going to do is we're going to dramatically increase your understanding. We're going to give you the tools to dramatically increase the effectiveness of your efforts, so you're doing not only things right, but you are doing the right things, and you're going to dramatically increase your results. Many people have taken this course and been able to earn more in the following year than they earned in the previous 5. Many people have taken this course and been able to make more progress in 1 or 2 years than they made in their lifetime to date. It is not unusual for a person to take this course and double or triple their income within a matter of a few weeks or a few months, simply by applying some of these principles. Now, do these principles work? These principles are the basis of all success and achievement in adult life. Every successful man or woman uses them to some degree. Every successful man or woman practices them consciously or unconsciously. What we've done is we've developed them together in this seminar program as a system, very much like a process of learning anything, that if you will take it, if you will use it, if you will apply it systematically, if you will put it into action and you'll work with it consistently for even a short period of time, you're going to start to see changes that are absolutely marvelous. It is my contention that you can be, have, or do anything that you want in life. You can grow and expand and fulfill your potential. You can earn more money. You can have greater peace of mind. You can have more health and energy. You can have better loving relationships. You can have financial security. You can have a sense of personal fulfillment. You can have a great feeling of peace inside simply by following what's in this course. So please come with me. Let's go and let's begin to explore everything that you're capable of doing. Let us look at what you may be in terms of your future. The starting point of self-knowledge is to recognize this wonderful fact is that you are extraordinary. You are unique. The odds against there being someone exactly like you are over 50 billion to 1. That every single part of your body, and anatomists and physiologists and doctors have demonstrated that your blood composition is different from any other person that has ever lived. Your fingerprints are different. Your lip prints are different. Even your ear prints are different. Even your toe prints are different from anybody that has ever lived. You are different from anyone else, and self-knowledge begins with accepting that you are a unique and special individual and that you have the capacity to do something wonderful with your life. Now, that being said, you are also the same as everybody else with respect to certain basic principles. Throughout the history of mankind, the most intelligent men and women who have ever lived have sought answers to the question of the human dilemma. What can people do in order to change the quality of their lives, their relationships, and their results? The great philosophers, the great metaphysicians, the great scholars have pondered over this sometimes for their entire lifetimes. In our century, I know men and women who spent 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years studying success and achievement to find out what general rules and principles we can draw upon to be more successful. The first thing that we have to start with, the basis for this entire course, the psychology of achievement, is this, is that you are a mental creature. The only thing that makes you truly unique is your mind. Everything else you have in common, as Eugene O'Neill, the playwright, said, with a horse or a pig. Your mind is what makes you unique. Your body simply carries your mind around. And just as electricity works on laws of electricity, and physics works on laws of physics, and nature works on laws of nature, there are certain mental laws that determine everything that happens to you. And these mental laws are as inexorable as the laws of gravity. They work 100% of the time. And every single success you have in life comes from living your life in harmony with basic mental laws. And every problem or difficulty you ever have in life comes from living your life out of harmony with those basic laws. Now, mental laws work 100% of the time, like gravity works 100% of the time. What it means is that if you step off a 10-story building in the city where you're living, or in London, England, or in Lima, Peru, you're going to go flat on the sidewalk, whether you know about gravity, whether you believe in gravity, whether you agree with gravity, or whether gravity is convenient for you, it's going to work on you nonetheless. The mental laws are exactly the same, and in this course I'm going to introduce you to about 20 mental laws, some of which are more important than others, but all of which it is critical for you to understand. Now let's start with the first of the mental laws. The first mental law, and by the way, these laws have been written about and studied for century after century, and many of them have been tested in our leading universities, research institutes, and think tanks in the last few years, and found to be as true as they've ever been imagined to be. The first law is what we call the law of control. Now, the law of control is very simple. It's a basic law, and we'll come back to it over and over again. It says simply this. It says that you feel good about yourself, you feel positive about yourself, to the degree to which you feel you are in control of your own life. Or you feel negative about yourself to the degree to which you feel you are not in control of your own life. All you have to do is look at your life today and ask yourself, what parts of your life do you feel the best at? What parts of the life do you feel most in control? You'll find those are the places where you are the happiest. And since the supreme human good is to achieve a state of happiness, which is expressed in peace of mind and health and loving relationships, control is absolutely essential. Psychologists today call this the difference between an internal locus of control, which is feeling that you're in charge of your own life, versus an external locus of control, which means the feeling that something outside of you, your bills, your relationships, your job, your health, are somehow controlling you. As a matter of fact, locus of control research, and there are many tests that you can take to determine where you are on this chart in terms of locus of control and what areas of your life you feel more in control and less in control. People with a very high internal locus of control are high achievers, they are more successful, they're more self-determined, they're happier. And many of the things we're trying to do in this course is to give you a far greater sense of control, of being in charge of every aspect of your life. Now, control begins with, first of all, your thoughts. Interestingly enough, your thoughts, what you think about things and how you think, determines your values. It determines what is going on inside you. Once they are stored away, your thoughts determine your feelings. It's how you think about something that determines your feelings, whether you are happy or unhappy, whether you are scared or confident. Your feelings then determine your actions. So we start off with the law of control, saying that the key to success is to feel that you are the master of your own destiny, that you're behind the steering wheel of your own life. You're in charge of your life by taking full and complete control over your thoughts. Your thoughts will control your feelings will control your actions, and your actions, remember, it's always your actions, will determine your success or your lack thereof. So the law of control is important. Now, as opposed to the law of control, we have what is called the law of accident. Now, the law of accident is really a metaphysical principle. It is only a law, like a traffic law or like a legal law, to the degree to which we live by it consistently. The law of accident is what about 80% of the population live by, plus or minus. The law of accident simply says that by failing to plan, you're planning to fail. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Now, the majority of people don't believe that they're living by this, but if you look at their lives, you see that that's true. Failing to plan means planning to fail. These are the sort of people that say, well, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's being in the right place at the right time. It's luck. It's the luck of the draw, and so on. These are people who, as a result of feeling that their life is controlled by forces outside themselves, don't have clear plans, don't have clear goals, are not working persistently and consistently day by day toward accomplishing something they want, and their lives just seem to drift and go around in circle like a ship without a rudder. Now, a person, just like a ship without a rudder, a person with no central plan is a person who has very little control. Is a person who feels that, in fact, they are out of control of their lives, like they're falling through space with no place to stop. And these people are invariably unhappy. The reason why people are negative today, the reason why people are unhappy, the reason why people are sick and frustrated, the reason why people underachieve in life is most of them are living by this law of accident. And in so doing, they have no sense of control over their lives, they have no sense of inner peace, they have no sense of happiness, and so on. So, we are going to show you how to free yourself from the law of accident personally, or permanently. Now, the next law is what is called the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect says that for every effect in your life, there is a specific cause. That everything that happens in the universe happens for a reason. That nothing happens by accident. That failure does not happen by accident and success does not happen by accident. That happiness or lack of happiness are a result of cause and effect relationships. That if you have an effect in your life that you want to have more of, more success, more money, more happiness, better health, you can trace it back to a cause. And what you do is you repeat and duplicate the cause. If you have an effect in your life that you want to have less of, and you have problems, difficulties, and so on, you can also trace that back to a cause. All progress in human life and human society stems back from identifying the causes of what we want more of or less of and changing the causes. Now, the law of cause and effect, of course, is the iron law of the universe. This is the law, if you like, that we can come back to over and over again, and many of our laws are paraphrases of the iron law. It's also called the law of sowing and reaping, that wherever you sow, that also shall you reap. But the iron law, the law of cause and effect, gives us a complete sense of control. If we believe that there's a cause and effect relationship, that everything happens for a reason, then we have a tremendous feeling of control in our lives. We can identify the causes, we can duplicate the causes, we can make our lives anything we want. The most important application of the law of cause and effect is this. It is that thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes and conditions are effects. Thoughts are causes and conditions are simply effects. The starting point of everything is your thoughts about something. It's your thoughts about a job, your thoughts about a relationship, your thoughts about your health, your thoughts about your future. Your thoughts become causative agents. The conditions become the effects. That if you wish to change any of the conditions of your life, you have to change the thoughts that precede those conditions. You have to change what is going on in your mind. Now, wonderfully enough, there's only one thing in the whole universe over which you have complete control, and that is your thoughts. So if you take full and complete control over your thoughts and keep your thoughts on what it is you want, make them positive causes, the conditions or effects will take care of themselves with the inexorability of a law of nature. Now, the next law is what is called the law of belief. A law of belief simply says that whatever you believe with feeling, and this is the key, with feeling, and the more emotion you put into a belief, becomes your reality. It becomes your reality because you will always act in a manner consistent with your beliefs. As a matter of fact, your entire reality right now is simply an outward picturing of your most intensely held beliefs. If you believe something that is positive or believe something that is negative, or as Henry Ford said, if you believe you can do a thing or if you believe you cannot, you are right. Our beliefs do form our realities. To the degree to which we believe anything to be true, our beliefs act as sort of like a screen. They filter out any information that is inconsistent with our beliefs. We have a deep down desire inside of us to remain consistent. So we're always trying to view our world, rationalize our world, interpret our world so that it is consistent with what we have already decided to believe. We develop what is called scotomas. A scotoma is a word in psychology that simply says that we develop blind spots. We do not see opportunities if we are convinced that there are no opportunities. We do not see possibilities for success if we don't believe that success is possible for us. However, if we begin to change our beliefs, we begin to change our realities. Let me give you an example. There's a story of a young man who came from a small Midwestern town. It's a true story. It was reported in the psychological journals a couple of years ago. He got straight A's all through junior high school and high school. At the end of the 12th grade, he wrote his Scholastic Achievement Test to go to university. A few weeks later, he got back a letter from the university saying, "You have scored 98 on the Scholastic Achievement Test, and you are hereby admitted to the university for the fall semester." Well, he didn't know very much about Scholastic Achievement Tests, and he thought that the 98 was an IQ score. Now, an IQ score of 98 is slightly below average and is about 20 points below what is necessary for college-level work. He was convinced, and he just discarded his entire high school career, all the A's that he's gotten. He was convinced that he could not do college-level work, but he went off to college in the fall. After the first semester, he was failing or nearly failing in every subject. His counselor called him in and said, "What seems to be the problem? You did extremely well in high school. These courses are only 1 degree of difficulty removed from your high school courses. Are you having problems with girls? Are you having problems with drugs? Having problems adjusting? What is it?" He said, "Well, sir," he said, "I'm doing the very best I can, but you can't blame me. I've only got a 98 IQ. And the counselor had a smile in front of me. He said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, in my letter of admission to the university, it said that I got a 98 on the Scholastic Achievement Test." He said, "Son, that's not an IQ." They said, "That's not an IQ. That is a percentile. What that means is that you scored equal to or higher than 98% of the students in the country who wrote that test. You're one of the brightest kids in this university." Well, this young guy went out. He checked on the Scholastic Achievement Test. He found it was true that the 98 was a percentile, not an IQ. He went back to his courses, and 2 years later, he was in the top 10 in a 30,000 student university. He was leading in all of his classes. Once he changed his reality, or he changed his beliefs about his intelligence, his reality changed automatically. Now, an important point with regard to this is that every one of us has self-limiting beliefs. Every one of us believes ourselves to be limited in some way. Every one of us believes ourselves to be limited in intelligence, creativity, money-making ability. I can't sell. I can't speak in front of audiences. We tend to think that we are not capable of being on time. We're not mechanically inclined, and so on and so forth. But exhaustive research demonstrates that talents are pretty evenly spread throughout the population. That most of the limitations we have do not exist in reality. They exist only in your own mind. And one of the starting points of great achievement is to start questioning those self-limiting beliefs and throw them off and act as if they did not exist. And when you act as if they didn't exist, lo and behold, they simply disappear. Okay, the next law is what is called the law of expectations. Now, the law of expectations is a law that has been talked about throughout all of human history. Just like in the law of belief, William James of Harvard said, "Belief creates the actual fact. As a man thinketh in his heart, or as he believeth, so is he." The law of expectations over and over says what you expect, you get. You get not what you want, but what you expect. That your expectations, especially your expectations about outcomes, how you think things are going to turn out, become your own self-fulfilling prophecies. And Dr. Robert Rosenthal of Harvard University has done something like 300 experiments on expectations theory, on what is called experimenter theory, and he finds that your expectations have an effect on other people and events and circumstances, even if your expectations are based on totally false information. whatever you expect with confidence. In other words, if you confidently expect good things to happen, surprise, surprise, good things happen to you. If you confidently expect negative things to happen, then negative things are going to happen to you. That most successful people have developed an attitude of confidently expecting good things to happen. It's called the attitude of positive self-expectancy. It is the attitude of the winner. The winner looks for good things to happen. The winner expects to win in advance, and lo and behold, whatever you expect with confidence tends to come true, even if the information upon which your expectations is based is totally false. Here, let me give you an example of expectations. Some years ago, Dr. Rosenthal, after conducting a variety of different experiments, came to the conclusion that the expectations that teachers had of students was having a tremendous effect on their ability to learn and their grade level averages. So he put together a series of experiments, and then one major experiment, which was tremendous. He went to the San Francisco Bay Area, and at the beginning of the school year, he had the principal call in 3 teachers. The 3 teachers were told that, by the principal, as a result of teaching excellence, they had been singled out as the 3 best teachers in the school, and that they were going to be given 30 students each of the brightest students in the school identified by IQ tests at the end of the last semester. They would be able to teach these students for the entire year, and it was estimated by experts that these students would jump in scholastic achievement an average of 20 to 30% over the course of that school year. Now, the teachers were told that one of the conditions was that they mustn't tell the teachers, they mustn't tell the students, and they mustn't tell their parents. They must continue to teach the same way, and classes were carefully monitored to make sure that they taught the same way they taught before, but only they would know that they had been given 30 bright students each to teach for the whole year. The teachers were delighted. The teachers went out. They were excited about this. They worked hard with those students. They spent time after school with them. They got really, really involved in teaching more than they ever had before. And at the end of the school year, lo and behold, those 3 classes led not only the school, but the entire school district in academic accomplishment. At the end of the year, they called the 3 teachers in. They sat them down and they said, well, you've had a good year. And they said, yes, well, it was great. Those kids were so bright. They were so eager to learn. They said, well, maybe we should tell you the truth, that this was an experiment. And the fact is that the beginning of the school year, we selected the names of 90 children by lottery from the school population at large and assigned them to your class. We didn't even know what their IQs were. They said, well, that's remarkable. Well, how could it have happened that they did so well? And then they looked at each other and said, well, of course, it's because we are the 3 most excellent teachers in this school. They said, well, the other side of it was simply this, is at the beginning of the school year, we put all the teachers' names in a hat, and yours were the first 3 names that were drawn. So this is what is called a double-blind experiment. They held constant for everything but expectations. Now, the expectations on the teachers were explicit. We believe that you are excellent teachers. The expectations of the teachers on the students were implicit. They were never spoken. The teachers just treated those students as though they were really intelligent, and the students bloomed and blossomed. And in one of the classes, a student from beginning of the year to the end of the year jumped 25 IQ points. In a subsequent experiment, a student jumped as much as 27 IQ points, which is to prove that high expectations teachers bring out intelligence in students that is completely unheard of. Marva Collins, the famous teacher in the Chicago inner city, has found that if you treat students as though they're intelligent and talk to them and work with them as though they are really bright, they will absolutely astonish you in terms of academic accomplishment. All right, this brings us to the critical role of expectations in your life. First part of expectations in your life, number 1, and where expectations affect you. Expectations of your parents. We have found that we have a tendency, as adults, to try to live up to or down to the expectation of our parents all our lives. If our parents were strong and supportive and loving and kind and encouraging and really believed in us, all our lives we'll strive unconsciously to live a life consistent with those expectations. If our parents were critical and condemnatory and bitched and complained and griped about our grades and so on and so forth, we will find that all of our life we'll have a tendency to hold ourselves back. So be alert to that. What were the expectations of your parents? Were they positive? Were they negative? Were they boosting or were they discouraging? And how much are they affecting you today? Second area of expectations is the expectations of your boss. In all of our studies, we have found, especially in the studies on excellence in organizations, we have found that high expectations, bosses have high performance work environments. Now, if you work for a boss who's negative, critical, and condemnatory, if you work for a boss that has negative expectations or a negative attitude, chances are your performance will be at the very lowest. As a matter of fact, if you look at the course of your working career, you'll find that the times of your life that you've enjoyed the most is working under a boss that has high positive expectations of you and your ability. Isn't that correct? The third area of expectations is the expectations you have of others, especially of your children, especially of your spouse or your mate, especially of your subordinates or the people who look up to you. You see, we are profoundly affected by the opinions of anybody we respect, by the attitudes toward us of anybody we respect. And if you have high positive expectations of the people around you, especially your children, they will rise to fulfill those expectations. So the basic rule with regard to this is always expect good things of other people. In word and deed, tell them continually, I believe in you. And number 4 area of expectations is the expectations you have of yourself. In the final analysis, these are the most powerful. If you have high positive expectations of yourself, you'll be astonished at what it will mean to your life. Always expect the best. Always expect the best. And here's a little exercise which I learned from one of my graduates, one of our live seminars. He found that by starting off every day with this simple little exercise and saying to himself, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. That this little exercise changed his whole attitude, that he went through the whole day with the attitude of somebody with a confident self-expectancy, that everything that happened during the course of the day, he thought, maybe this is something wonderful that's going to happen to me. And you know that if you will do this, if you will say before you go to sleep, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me tomorrow. And if you'll say when you get up in the morning, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. And if all day long you say, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me, you'll find that as you go to sleep the next night, and try this today, it's a very powerful exercise. It sounds a little bit corny, but it's a very powerful exercise. If you'll try it, you'll find that when you go to sleep, you will not be able to think of all the wonderful things that happen to you. You'll just be surprised that your parking spaces will open up and friends will call and you'll get checks in the mail. Just your life will be a series of really positive, happy experiences. So always expect the best. I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today, and by the inexorability of a law of nature, it's going to happen to you. I can assure you it's happened to thousands and thousands and thousands of our graduates who will literally astonish you the effect of this corny little exercise. All right, the next law is what is called the law of attraction. Now, the law of attraction simply says that you are a living magnet. You are a living magnet. And that you inevitably attract into your life the people and circumstances that are in harmony with your dominant thoughts. In the universe, we know that all of energy is in a state of vibration. That everything is vibrating. Even this board is vibrating. Your skin is vibrating. Every substance is vibrating because of its molecular structure. And we also know there's the law of radiation. That everything is vibrating outward. The process of entropy. And we find that whatever you are thinking, your thoughts are also a form of energy that is vibrating and radiating out from you and that travels at the speed of light so that you can affect people and circumstances at great distances. Have you ever had an experience where you're thinking about somebody and the telephone rings and it's them? Have you ever had an experience where you phone somebody else and they say, we were just talking about you? It just leaps into your mind? Have you ever had an experience when you're in tune with your husband or wife and you think, you know, I'd like to go out to dinner at such and such a place tonight, and you call home and they will say, why don't we go out to dinner at such and such a place? These are all examples of this law of attraction. The law of attraction is considered by many to be one of the most important laws of human existence. In this, you will always attract to yourself, positive or negative, people and circumstances that harmonize with your dominant thoughts. That whatever you're thinking on a continuing basis, you're attracting into your life. You're drawing it into your life like a magnet. That's why it's so important that you keep your thoughts on what you want, keep your thoughts on what you desire, and keep your thoughts off of what you don't want. And by the way, as you advance and develop and become more proficient and more sharp with these methods, the law of attraction will work faster for you and with greater accuracy. So be careful. Use it right. The last law we'll talk about in this section is called the law of correspondence. The law of correspondence is a law that says, and it's quoted by Jesus, as within, so without. As within, so without. And what it simply means is this. It means that your outer world is a mirror. And that's probably the best word. Your outer world is a mirror, and it simply reflects back to you what is going on in your inner world. That your outer world is the result of your inner world. That what is going on within determines what is going on without. That if you want to change your outer world, you have to change your inner world. Now that means that you can look at your words, you can look at your level of health. What is going on in terms of your physical health is largely determined by what is going on in your mind. What is going on in your relationships is the most perfect example, because you find that when you are feeling good inside, your relationships go smoothly. When you're feeling negative or stressed inside, your relationships go poorly. Your relationships are the mirror image reflection of the quality of your own personality. You can tell how healthy your personality is by looking at the relationships change his life and change the lives of millions of others, which is a sort of tax on to all of these laws that we're talking about. And it was simply this, is you become what you think about. You become what you think about. And since the only thing that you can control is your thinking, if you change what you are thinking about, you will begin to change your reality. If you change what you expect, you change what you believe, you change your dominant thoughts, you change your inner workings, you begin to attract into your life people, circumstances, events, opportunities, everything consistent with your new thoughts. The reason people are unsuccessful is they think thoughts of unsuccess or failure. The other line, which is very, very important, says that all causation is mental. We live in a mental universe. All causation is mental. If you wish to change your universe, you have to change your mentality. And this brings us to the most important line of all, which is simply this. And let me write it over here. If you change your thinking, dynamic, vital, living, successful life that you desire on the outside. When we talk about human potential, have you ever wondered what accounts for the huge disparity in results and performance between one person and another? You know, a person who's making $250,000 a year is not 10 times smarter or better than a person who's making $25,000 a year. Why is there 10 times the difference in income? And you go all the way up the ladder to a person who's making $2.5 million a year. Is that person 100 times better, smarter than the person making $25,000 a year? Impossible. In a recent study of IQs, they picked 1,000 men and women out of the population and tested them for IQ. They found that the top person in that 1,000 selection was only 2.5 times smarter than the bottom person in that selection of IQs. Only 2.5 times the disparity, and that's probably true over the whole population. So what accounts for this great difference? Well, we talk about human potential. We come down to a very simple formula that I came up with some years ago that probably explains it a little bit. The formula starts off with what we call IA, which is inborn attributes. That's the qualities, the intelligence, the ability, the temperament, the things that you're born with that you can't really change very much. Plus acquired attributes. Now, acquired attributes are very important. Those are your education, your training, your skill, your experience, knowledge, wisdom, and so on. Multiplied times A, which is your attitude, equals individual human potential, or individual human performance, or individual human results, if you like. Now, of these three, inborn attributes are largely fixed at birth. Acquired attributes can be changed, but it takes a while to change them, although sometimes they can be changed very rapidly. One valuable piece of information can dramatically change your effectiveness. But attitudes can be increased or decreased dramatically in seconds. We talked about that before, and a very powerful way to instantaneously improve your attitude is to say to yourself, I believe something wonderful is going to happen to me today. As we said before, our expectations about outcomes determines our attitude. In other words, if you expect things to turn out well, you're going to have a positive attitude. If you expect things to turn out negatively, you're going to have a negative attitude. And the wonderful thing is you can manufacture your own expectations. I mean, you can expect whatever you want. You can expect good things, you can expect negative things, and chances are you won't be disappointed. Where do our expectations come from? Our expectations come from our beliefs, if you like, and our values. These are the core or the central motivating factors in our personality, our beliefs and values. And this brings us to an understanding of human potential. It means that basically our attitude is the outward expression of what is going on internally, consistent with the mental laws that we talked about. And with regard to beliefs, each of us has a bundle of beliefs way down deep inside, which psychologists call the self-concept. Now, the self-concept, or the discovery of it, has been considered by many to be the most important single breakthrough in understanding human performance in the 20th century, and I personally agree. The self-concept is like, if you wanted to use a military analogy, is the command center. Or if you wanted to use a technological analogy, it is the central program of your basic computer. It is a bundle of beliefs, values, attitudes, feelings, ideas, and so on, which are stored away down inside, which are a result of virtually every experience you've ever had in your life. And some researchers say that the self-concept begins to form even before birth. But this self-concept, once it is in place, precedes, predicts, and determines your levels of effectiveness and performance in every area of your life. Your self-concept becomes the command center or the master program. The self-concept, or this bundle of beliefs, then determines what you will say, what you will do, how you will act, how you feel and react, and so on. What does it mean? It means that all improvements in your external life, all changes in your reality begin with a change in the self-concept. Let me give you an understanding of how it means. Here's a very simple graph. We talk about human potential. We say the average person uses 10% or less of their potential. According to the research, it's probably much less. Stanford Brain Institute in Santa Clara, California, estimates that it's probably closer to 2%. But we'll be generous. We'll say the average person is using 10%. It means that in the best of cases, the average person, you and I, have 90% of our potential untapped. One of the great philosophers, Oliver Wendell Holmes, said the great tragedy of the average person is they go to their grave with their music still in them. They're still functioning on far, far less of their potential. So this is human potential. We find there's a direct relationship between human potential and the self-concept. That since our self-concept, or our estimates of ourselves, if you like, are usually far lower than they need to be, our level of performance and effectiveness is far lower too. And we know that our self-concept is largely subjective. What does that mean? It means that the self-concept, what we believe to be true about ourselves, is really not based in reality. It's based on information that we've taken in. People who win lotteries are often flat broke 2 or 3 years later. They just burn the money because the money is far beyond their self-concept. If you go 10% or more below your self-concept level of income, you find yourself scrambling. You work harder. You work longer. You think more creatively. You look at different ways to increase your income or second income opportunities. The only way to improve any part of your life, including your income, is to raise your self-concept level of income by beginning to think about yourself continually in terms of earning more money. If you want to lose weight, the only way you can lose weight is what? Is to think thin, by beginning to think of yourself as a thinner person. If you want to become a more popular, a more loving, a happier person, a healthier person, you have to begin to think over and over about those things until they become part of your new self-concept. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's an essential part of programming your mind for success. Your overall self-concept is determined by the average of your self-concepts in all the areas that you consider important. Now, your self-concept is made up of 3 critical parts. The first part of the self-concept is the self-ideal. The self-ideal is yourself as an employee, how much you like yourself as a boss, how much you like yourself as a money earner, a professional speaker, an athlete, and so on. How much you like yourself, your level of self-esteem, your overall emotional feeling about any area of your life determines your performance and effectiveness in that area. Wonderfully enough, since you become what you think about, your self-concept is malleable, your self-esteem can be built by repeating over and over again, I like myself. 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 The more you say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself, the more you repeat that over and over again, the more your self-esteem goes up. The more your self-esteem goes up, the more your overall self-concept goes up. When your overall self-concept goes up, you perform better at everything else that you attempt. That every single time you say, I like myself, 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 is like pumping yourself up psychologically. Everything that happens that causes your self-esteem to go up causes you to perform better. Everything that happens that causes your self-esteem to go down causes you to perform worse, make more mistakes, be unhappier, and so on. Now, a critical point about liking yourself, about self-esteem and self-liking, is that, number one, is you can never like or love anybody else more than you like or love yourself. That your level of self-esteem is the determinant of the quality of the relationships you have with others. And number two is you can never expect anybody else to like or respect you more than you like or respect yourself. And how much you like and respect yourself determines their attitudes toward you. Every single school of psychology today is coming to agreement on the fact that how much you genuinely like and accept yourself as a valuable and worthwhile human being has an effect on everything that happens to you. How much you like yourself. And what you can do is you can improve your self-esteem with that. I like myself. 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 Well, this brings us to the question of where does self-esteem, where does the self-concept come from? And we found that self-concept, if anything, self-concept is malleable in that you are not born with a self-concept. Is that you're not born with any idea of yourself. You're not born with self-image or self-esteem, that you're born in a way as pure potential. It's probably the best way to put it. The average person comes into the world as pure potential and has no self-concept. That everything you are today, every feeling that you have, every attitude or value, you had to learn over the course of your lifetime. We also know that the child comes into the world with a very high need for love and touching. And a tremendous amount of research indicates that we need a lot of love and touching all of our lives, but especially in our formative years, because as a child, we learn who we are, how valuable we are, whether we're important, intelligent, attractive, lovable, funny. We learn all of these things by the way our parents treat us. If our parents, our siblings, our aunts and uncles, but especially our parents, treat us like we're really important kids, then we grow up thinking that we're really important. If our parents do not, then something else happens. We know that the first few years of life are the most important in developing the self-concept. That the child starts off at 0 when the child is born with no idea of who she is or who he is or how valuable they are. And in the first second, hiding down that healing concrete deep into the foundation of our personality. Remember, children need love like roses need rain. Children that are deprived of love often die of love starvation. It's a disease called marasmus. Now, what else do we know about children? We know that children come into the world with 2 remarkable attributes. The first is that they're fearless. Children are born with no fears. They're not afraid of anything except falling and loud noises. And this is expressed in the attitude, I can. Children come into the world believing they can do anything. And anybody who's ever raised a child to the age of 3 or 4 or 5 knows you have to spend those first few years stopping them from killing themselves because they're little kamikaze pilots, because they're not afraid of anything. The second attribute is they come into the world completely spontaneous. They say what they want. They do what they want. They are completely uninhibited. They just are completely unafraid. They do anything that they want. And this is expressed in the attitude, I don't have to. I don't have to. If you ever try to control a child, you'll find that the attitude of a young child, the first thing they say, we begin to develop negative habit patterns. Negative habit patterns are conditioned responses to stimuli. Negative habit patterns develop very early in life. They're developed as a result of a repetition of fear and pain over and over again. They're developed as a result of destructive criticism, physical punishment, and so on. Very early in life, we begin to develop 2 major manifestations which follow us throughout our lives and more than anything else inhibit our potential as adults. The first is what is called the inhibitive negative habit pattern. The inhibitive negative habit pattern is learned when the child is told over and over again, don't, get away from there, stop, leave that alone. And the child is punished. Whenever the child tries something new or gets into something or smells something or pours something over or breaks something accidentally, the parent blows up and gets angry and upset. You see, the child is driven by an insatiable curiosity to explore his or her world. And what happens is when they do explore it and they get into something, they tip something over, if the parent overreacts and spanks the child, we feel like withdrawing and getting away from the event. And the fear of failure is the major reason for failure in adult life. It's the major reason why we hold back from fulfilling our potential. As a matter of fact, all negative habit patterns are experienced in the physical body. And you can tell a negative habit pattern because you actually feel it in your physical body. The inhibitive negative habit pattern, the fear of failure, the I can't, is experienced, first of all, in the solar plexus. You ever have an occasion where you have to speak in front of a group, or you have to go into a performance review, or you have to make a cold call? First of all, the solar plexus tightens up. If the fear of the situation continues, you start to breathe harder, and your heart starts to beat faster, your respiratory rate, and sometimes you'll get a headache, like a migraine headache in the front of your head. Sometimes your throat will tighten up and you won't be able to speak. You'll feel completely dry. Sometimes you'll get so tense and so frightened that you'll have to run and go to the bathroom. These are all manifestations. There's no physical danger, but there's a psychological danger, a conditioned response. And whenever we feel these things, the natural tendency is to back away from the situation that's causing them. And of course, type A behavior is a an obsessive compulsive need to somehow please somebody with no standards of performance so that you can never accomplish it. The fear of rejection drives us. It makes us very, very sensitive to the opinions of other people. We do things that other people want. We don't do things that we want. We're always trying to please others. We have a preoccupation or a concern with the opinions and feelings and attitudes of others to the point where we deny our own needs. Now, the fear of rejection is felt down the back half of the body. We divide the body in half. It's felt right down the back half of the body. The first place you start to feel the fear of rejection is usually in the shoulders and in the neck. You start to feel stiff and sore and tense. Sometimes when you have a lot to do, you'll feel tremendous stress in the lower back. The muscles will start to pull in the lower back. Sometimes it'll manifest itself in phlebitis and varicose veins. Very often it can give you very bad headaches in the back of the head because the carotid arteries, which carry blood up into the head, the muscles around them constrict and the amount of blood flow to the head slows down and you feel this pounding headache in the back of your head. These two fears, the compulsive, or these two negative habit patterns, the compulsive and the inhibitive, which are the result of destructive criticism, the great destroyer of personalities, plague us all in our lives. Now, the wonderful thing about these is because they are learned habits, we can unlearn them. We can overcome the fear of failure that holds us back. We can overcome the fear of rejection that caused us to do things that please other people rather than pleasing ourselves by working on our own self-esteem. Because there is an inverse relationship between self-esteem and the basic negative habit patterns. The more you like yourself, the less you fear failure. The more you like yourself, the less you fear rejection. The more you like yourself, the less you fear anything. And if you continue to repeat, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself over and over again, if you continue to say this, eventually, over time, your self-esteem goes up higher, self-esteem goes down, their ability to perform goes down too. If you destructively criticize a person often enough, long enough, and hard enough, they reach the point where they won't try anything at all. They become what we call hypersensitive. And a hypersensitive adult is a person who cannot take criticism from anybody. A hypersensitive adult is the person who is very, very tense and anxious if you even suggest that they're not doing the right thing. If you have to deal with a hypersensitive adult, the key is to sit them down and remember 4 things. Number 1, always begin with praise. Number 2 is protect the person's self-esteem at all costs. Number 3 is discuss the performance, not the person. Talk about the behavior rather than the person. And number 4 is it number 4? Number 4 is to focus on the future versus the past. Focus on what is going to be done differently in the future rather than what has happened in the past. Why is that? A very simple reason is because a person cannot control the past. Not being able to control the past, any criticism over what they've done in the past causes them tremendous stress and frustration. You'll make the people around you like, love, accept, and respect themselves, and you'll create a peak performance environment. It is the starting point to great success and achievement in life. So say over and over to yourself, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. In order to unlock your full potential, it's absolutely essential that you understand the relationship between the conscious and the subconscious mind. There's thousands of books have been written on this subject. There's tremendous complexities. There's references to the conscious and the subconscious, especially the subconscious, throughout all of human history. The subconscious is often called the powerhouse of your being. And we're going to talk about how you affect the subconscious more as we go through this program. But let's start off talking about the relationship between the two minds and what you can do to begin controlling and changing the programming within the subconscious. The conscious and the subconscious minds are very beautifully designed by a master designer, if you know what I mean, in that they have very separate functions and they work perfectly in tandem with each other. Probably a good way to illustrate it is to say this is the conscious mind and this is the subconscious mind. Actually, the conscious mind does about 10% of your thinking. It's responsible for about 10% of your conscious awareness, and the subconscious mind is at least 90% or more. When we talk about human potential and unlocking human potential, we mean unlocking the vast capacity or power of the subconscious. So what does the conscious mind do? Well, the conscious mind has certain specific functions. First of all, the conscious mind is objective. The conscious mind can look at the world clearly, if you like, with clarity, and think about it analytically. Objective by meaning without emotion. Second of all, the objective mind, or the conscious mind, is rational. And it is also discriminating. These are three of the qualities. In other words, it can discern the differences between truth and falsehood. It can analyze. It is sort of like the mathematical or unemotional part of the brain. The conscious mind has four major functions. The first function is that the conscious mind identifies incoming data. Now, incoming data can come from a variety of different sources. It can be thoughts that you have, or it can be things that are happening to you in the external world. So let us say you're walking across the street. This is your mind. You're walking across the street and you hear the roar of an automobile engine. Your eyes immediately turn to the right to see what the sound is and to identify what is that sound. When you see the automobile, you identify, you attach the sound to the car. The second thing that the conscious mind does is it compares that moving automobile to all other moving automobiles of your experience. Now, if you live in a big city like New York, when you see a car and you compare that moving automobile with other cars, you've seen 100,000, maybe 1 million cars moving, and your reflexes are very, very sharp. If you live in a country that doesn't have very many automobiles, chances are when you see a moving vehicle, your reflexes will be very, very slow. The comparison is done with the emotion, the more instantaneously the subconscious responds to your command. The subconscious is activated by emotion. Emotion of fear, emotion of desire, the survival instinct, the love instinct, but it is always an emotion that triggers the subconscious. Okay, what are some of the features of the subconscious mind? The subconscious mind is like a massive data bank. As a massive data bank, the role of the subconscious is to store and retrieve data. In other words, the subconscious mind is the subjective mind, in that it simply is the mind that obeys. Just as the conscious mind commands, the subconscious mind obeys. The subconscious mind has no thought of its own. By the way, the conscious mind has no memory. The subconscious mind is the seat of all memory. The conscious mind, remember, can only hold one thought at a time, whereas you can remember millions of facts. The relationship between the conscious and the subconscious is the conscious is like a gardener, and the subconscious is like a garden. Whatever seeds you plant in your subconscious mind, the subconscious mind goes to work to grow. In the subconscious mind, you have a whole series of different programs, the self-concept, which contains all the information on all the subjects that are important to you and all of your previous experiences and responses to those situations, so that if you have a new situation similar to it, one of the roles of the subconscious is to keep your behaviors consistent with your previous behaviors. So that if you have always been fearful in a situation, you see the situation, you'll instantaneously be fearful without thought. If you're in a situation that you don't know anything about, the natural tendency is for you to be neither fearful nor unfearful, because you don't know enough until you build up an experience bank. And this brings us to three critical laws. Three of the most important mental laws that we talked about. Remember, we talked about how your whole life is determined by mental laws. The first of these three mental laws is the law of subconscious activity. The law of subconscious activity says, and when you feel negative, your self-concept is negative, and you will act in the same manner. Which brings us to our second law. The second law is the law of concentration. Actually, this is the ninth law that we've talked about since we began. The law of concentration is very, very, very important. It's so important, as a matter of fact, each of these laws is so important in their place as to be enough in themselves to control your destiny. The law of concentration simply says this. It says that whatever you dwell upon grows. Whatever you dwell upon grows. Whatever you think about over and over again grows in your reality. It's very simple. I used to do a course on creative thinking, and the way that you explain it is you imagine that this is the total mental capacity that you have. And when you send a thought into this, it takes up this amount of space, and all the rest of the mental capacity is used to, this is your thought, is used to think about all of the other things in your mind. But the more you think, from the conscious down to the subconscious, the more of your mental capacity is committed to thinking about this one idea, until you reach a point where if you dwell upon something consistently, you reach a point where you think of nothing else. And as you think of nothing else, you begin to set up this vibratory field. The subconscious mind is the core of the law of attraction and the law of vibration and the law of radiation. You begin to set up this vibratory field that sends out thought energy from you consistent with what you are thinking about and draws back into your life people and circumstances in harmony with those thoughts. So you just have to look around you and you have to say, what are you thinking about all the time? What are you dwelling on all the time? And the basic rule with regard to the law of concentration is to dwell upon, think about what you want to happen, not about what you fear. And this brings us to the third law in this theory, and that is the law of substitution. Now, the law of substitution, I've had many of my graduates tell me, as you think about what you want, eventually, because of the law of substitution, you have less and less time, less and less emotion to think about what you don't want. Why is it that people are successful? It's simply this. In the Bible it says, to them that hath shall more be given, and from him who hath not, even that which he has shall be taken away. What it means is simply this: the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Why? It's because the rich think about wealth and affluence all the time. And what do the poor think about? The poor think about lack, loss, and limitation, risk, danger, fear, failure all the time. So if you want to unlock your potential, if you want to go straight to the stars, you have to use the law of substitution to keep your mind on what you want. Use the law of concentration to dwell continually on the results you desire. Be solution-centered rather than problem-centered. Be goal-centered rather than loss-centered. And the law of subconscious activity will begin to adjust your words, your actions, your feelings, your emotions, and everything to the point where you will draw into your life the people or circumstances that will harmonize with it. Now, what's the most powerful thing you can do? It's very simply this. Success begins with taking purposeful, systematic control of the content of your conscious mind. Purposeful, systematic control of the content of your conscious mind. Everything comes back to the law of control, as we talked about at the very beginning. Purposeful, systematic control is best taken by saying over and over again, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. When you repeat, I like myself, or better, I love myself over and over again, you drive this thought into the subconscious mind. More and more you think of yourself in positive terms. More and more you push out thoughts of inferiority, negativity, fear, failure, rejection, and so on. More and more you reprogram all previous data in your subconscious computer so that it is consistent with high self-esteem, personal effectiveness, and excellent personal performance. Is that the key to your success in life is to use the power of your subconscious mind to program it with thoughts, words, pictures, ideas, and feelings consistent with high performance, and keep your mind on what you desire and off of what you fear. Remember, the only thing in the world you can control is your thinking. The only thing in the world you can control are your conscious thoughts, and if you will do that, everything else will become possible for you. We said in the first series of modules that the starting point of all peak performance is self-esteem. It's how much you like yourself, how much you love yourself, how much you accept yourself as a valuable and worthwhile human being. The second part of peak performance, I think the two key requirements, the second part is self-responsibility. Self-esteem plus self-responsibility, each reinforcing themselves. And what self-responsibility says simply is that you are the architect of your own destiny, that you are the master of your own fate, that you are totally self-responsible, that everything that you are or ever will be is up to you and you alone. Now, you can believe in a higher power, as I do, and you can say that the higher power is responsible, but God helps those who help themselves. And for this earthly life, you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of what happens to you. If you don't like the way things are going, it's up to you to change it. But there's no way that you can ever give away responsibility. And this whole subject of responsibility is one that is very controversial. And as you will see as we talk in this session, it's one that you have to understand with crystal clarity if you want to achieve your full potential as a human being. So, we go over here. One of the things that we know is we start off as infants, if you like, when we're born. I'll just write I for infant. We start off as infants, and as we grow to become adults at the age of 18 years, we start off with zero responsibility. And as we grow toward becoming adults, we gain responsibility more and more. until by the time we become adults at the age of 18 years, if our parents have brought us up properly, if they have prepared us, if they've encouraged us to be self-reliant, if they've encouraged us to make our own decisions and think for ourselves and plan our own lives, at the age of 18 years, legally speaking, psychologically, morally, mentally, physically, and everything else, you are ready to take over your own life. Now, if your parents have not prepared you as an adult for total responsibility, it doesn't matter. At the age of 18 and from 18 onward, you are 100% responsible. For the rest of your life, you can never absolve yourself of responsibility. For the rest of your life, everything that happens to you is up to you, totally and without forgiveness. The slogan of the truly responsible person is, if it's to be, it's up to me. Which means, as Henry Ford said, never complain, never explain. Never complain, never explain. What that means is if you don't like the way things are, then it's up to you to change them. And if you're not willing to take steps to change them, then don't complain about them. Just simply accept them. Men who are men and women who are women, don't complain about the it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to you. This is one of the hardest things to understand, because when we're children, at this stage, we're totally dependent. And being totally dependent, we develop, if you like, a habit pattern or a conditioned response, and we look for the reason that things happen outside of ourselves. As we become adults, if we're not careful, we will still retain this dependency, and we will long for what is called the pseudo-security of childhood. That time in childhood when someone took care of us. That time in childhood when we were fed and clothed and our home was taken care of and our school and everything. We didn't have to worry about a thing because they took care of it. As we grow up, we go off to school, and the people at school, they take care of things. And if we're not careful, we get into the work world, and then again it's they. It's always someone else outside of ourselves who is ultimately responsible for ourselves. One of the things which I'll talk about later is the whole idea of self-development. Most people, because they've been taken all their education in the public school system, think that it's up to them when they're adults to continue their education. If nobody comes along to continue it, they just simply don't do it. Now there's another point, and that's the difference between maturity and immaturity. And here's a very simple example. Imagine that this is the course of life, again from infancy to adulthood. And everybody reaches the stage, sooner or later, where they come to this great cliff and this great canyon. And this is the side of immaturity. This is the side of childhood. This is the side where we are dependent upon others and where we look to others for our answers and our solutions. We look outside of ourselves. At this point, we come to the edge of this canyon. At the edge of this canyon, we look across into the land of maturity, the land of adulthood. And each one of us has to make a decision to jump in one great leap from being a child to being an adult. Now, sometimes this is forced on us. Sometimes it happens in an evolutionary way. But sooner or later, we have to make the decision to accept the fact that we're in charge of our own lives, we're the architects of our own destinies, and then get on with it. What do most people do? Unfortunately, what most people do is they turn back at this point. They slip into marriages where somebody will take care of them. They take jobs where they expect their bosses to take care of them and so on. Or they just simply avoid responsibility by looking for the cause of everything that happens to them in other people and other circumstances. It's their bills, it's their health, it's the way their parents treated them and so on. They're not really responsible. On the other hand, sometimes they decide to take a little responsibility but not too much, which is the equivalent of trying to leap over a canyon in 2 jumps. And where the vast majority of people end up, unfortunately, is in the valley. And this is the valley of excuses. The great majority of people spend their whole life in the valley of excuses, making excuses rather than making progress. There's an old saying that says the disease of excusitis, which is the habit of making excuses to excuse away our failures and our inadequacies, is fatal to success. The habit of making excuses is fatal to your success. So the question you have to ask yourself when we talk about responsibility is, what excuses do you use not to move ahead? There was a very famous story by Tolstoy, where Tolstoy and his brothers would play, and they had a game. And the game was that out in the garden there would be a box. And in the box was the answer to all the riddles of life. And you could find the box under a certain bush as long as you didn't think about a big white rabbit. As long as you kept your mind clear of that big white rabbit and you didn't think about the rabbit, you could find the answer to all the mysteries of life. Well, of course, Nobody ever found the box, or nobody ever found the answer to the mysteries of life because they couldn't stop thinking of the big white rabbit. The question you have to ask yourself is, what is your big white rabbit? What is it that you think of? What is the excuse that looms into your mind whenever you think of something that you could do or have or be? A new job, a new challenge, an opportunity, changing something in your life that you're not happy with. What is the white rabbit? What is the excuse that pops into your mind? You say, well, I can't do that because. Or another thing is, yes, but. I'd like to, but. There's always a reason. I'm too young, I'm too old. I'm too tall, I'm too short. I don't have enough education. I've got too much education. It's the wrong time, it's the wrong place, and so on. What is your white rabbit? What is it that sticks in the back of your mind that causes you to make excuses, that causes you to hang back from taking responsibility, that keeps you in the land of childhood, immaturity, and irresponsibility? Very, very important question to ask. Now, when we talk about responsibility, we talk about something else. It's simply this, is that the acceptance of responsibility is not optional. Many of us like to think that, well, I'll take a little responsibility here, I'll take a little responsibility there. No, the acceptance of responsibility is not optional. From the time you become 18 years old, you are 100% responsible. You have no choice in the matter. As a matter of fact, there are very few things in life over which you have no choice, but you have no choice in this. It is mandatory. It is mandatory if you wish to fulfill your potential, if you wish to become everything you're capable of becoming, you must take full responsibility for bringing about the circumstances, for making the changes, for making the hard decisions necessary. If you take the word responsibility, you can break it into two words, response and ability. And one of the things which I've learned as I've studied history is that all of life is a series of challenges, difficulties, problems, setbacks, obstacles to face. And the difference between the winners and losers in life is not the difference in problems, because everybody has problems. And most people, and many people, have more and bigger problems than you or I could ever dream of. The difference in life, the difference between winners and losers, is the responses to the problems. Many years ago, a man named Oswald Spengler wrote a book in which he talked about what he called the challenge-response theory. The challenge-response theory simply said that civilizations grow and decline to the degree to which they meet challenges effectively and respond effectively. A small society starts out small, and almost invariably it will be challenged by either an external enemy or nature or weather or something else. If the society responds in a positive and constructive way to the challenge, the society grows. As it grows, it triggers additional challenges, difficulties. If it responds to them effectively, it grows some more. Oswald Spengler studied the 21 great empires of human civilization and found that every single one followed this cycle. As long as the civilization continued to rise to the challenge, it continued to grow stronger and stronger. The reason why this analogy is so important is that we as human beings are exactly the same. We grow to the degree to which we respond effectively, to the degree to which we rise to the challenges without making excuses that life throws at us. And when we look at the great men and women of history, whether it's Albert Schweitzer or Winston Churchill or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we look at those great people, we find that they were always people that rose to the challenges of the time. If ever you wish to be capable of rising to great challenges, what you have to do is you have to start off on a daily basis rising to small challenges, which means no matter what happens, you accept the challenge, you accept the responsibility, you refuse to make excuses, and you go forward. Now, there's three areas in life, in our modern life, which you must be very, very aware of. The first area is the political area. If you look around you, you will find that there is a great drive toward the government doing it, the government being responsible. Make the government responsible. What people are doing is they want the government to be their parent. They want the government to protect them and take care of them. But the more you vote for politicians to do things for you, the more you give politicians control. You see, you can never give away responsibility. You can only give away control. How do you give away control? You give away control in terms of voting for them to spend more of your money, regulate more of your businesses, tax away more of your income, and so on. The second area, so let me just finish this. The urge towards statism, collectivism, socialism, large government, and so on is all aimed at somehow making the government, that faithless bunch of bureaucrats, responsible for the challenges of our own lives. Now, the second area where this is prevalent is in the criminal justice system. In the criminal justice system, you will find that the one characteristic of all criminals is that they refuse to accept responsibility for their crime. It was always someone else or something else. It was always their childhood or the background or the other guys. That the way that people get out of the criminal justice system is they accept responsibility for the crimes they've committed. And they say, I did this. Nobody made me do it. I am responsible. And they stop going back to jail. The third area is in medicine. Today we know that almost all of our problems in medicine are psychological in origin, or we inflict things on ourselves. The average American or Canadian is about 10 to 20 pounds overweight. In medicine, we expect the doctor to be responsible. Just imagine how we would what kind of care you would take of yourself if you were on a desert island for life, with no doctors, no nurses, no hospitals, no medicine, no nothing, where you had nothing to fall back on. Very, very important point. So all around you in society, you're going to notice this clamor, this demand, I am not responsible. Make somebody else responsible. But this is the key. Remember, you are always free to choose. You are free to choose your responses. You are free to choose the quality of your emotional life. Do you know that you decide how you're going to feel by how you are going to respond? You decide when to get angry, when to be happy, when to be unhappy. You decide what your attitude is going to be when you get up in the morning. You decide the quality of your physical life. You're the one who decides what you eat, what you drink, what you don't eat and drink. You determine the quality of your financial life. You're the one who determines the quality and quantity of the work that you contribute. In every case, you're free to choose what you want. If you want things to be different, the starting point is to accept full, unqualified responsibility for your life. I first discovered this whole concept of responsibility when I was 21 years old. I was living in a little apartment. I was working on a construction job. It was 35 degrees below zero outside. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money in the bank. My clothes were old. I had failed out of high school. And I looked around me in that cold winter in that little apartment with no future and not much of a past. And I said to myself, if ever I want anything to change, it's up to me. That's the time where I really got scared. It suddenly hit me right between the eyes that if I wanted my life to be different, it was up to me to make my life different. And if I can get only one point across to you in this simple segment, this little segment is that the starting point of flying to the stars, the starting point of taking complete charge of your life, the starting point of great success and great achievement is to accept complete, unconditional responsibility. If it's to be, it's up to me. If it's to be, it's up to you. Continuing on the subject of responsibility versus irresponsibility. Many years ago, back in 1972, I began a study in an area of metaphysics that dealt with the psychology of the evolution of human potential. And one of the things that leaped out of those pages at me, and I've never really have recovered from it, was the discussion of the connecting link between irresponsibility and negative emotions. And the fact that negative emotions are the great blocking emotions or crippling emotions of your life and my life. If the whole purpose of life, if you like, is to achieve higher levels of peace of mind, happiness, contentment, satisfaction, and so on, we have to sit down and we have to look and say, what stops us, or what is blocking us, or what gets in the way of us really enjoying our lives? And you find invariably it's negative emotions of some kind. Now, I'm not talking about the negative emotions that are associated with someone dying or with a great loss. I'm talking about the negative emotions that we experience on a day-to-day basis that rob us of peace of mind, rob us of health and energy, affect our loving relationships, get in the way of our financial independence, rob us of a feeling of fulfillment, and so on. So we're going to talk in this session about eliminating negative emotions, and I want to bring us back to this whole discussion of responsibility. This is one of the most important things that I've ever found in my life. It's simply this, is that if we take a graph or chart, and come with me for a second and let's chart this, and we take from the highest to the lowest, and up here we have a totally responsible person. This is a person who is completely self-assured, completely self-responsible, makes no excuses at all. And down here at the other end we have an irresponsible person, a person who makes excuses for everything. Now, this is the positive end of the scale, this is the negative end of the scale. Every one of us, you and I, are somewhere on this scale moving up or down with every decision that we take. Now, we have found, and this is what got to me, and I said a little bit earlier, that there's a one-to-one relationship between how much you feel you are in control of your own life and how positive or how happy you are. Well, there's a one-to-one relationship between the amount of responsibility you accept and the amount of control you experience in your life. And there's a one-to-one relationship between the amount of responsibility and control you accept and the amount of freedom that you feel that you have. Freedom is the indispensable requirement for happiness. That true success, true happiness in life means being free to live your life your own way as you decide, without anybody else telling you what to do. Living your life as a bird, free as a bird to do whatever you want. Well, there's a direct relationship between responsibility, control, and freedom, and there's a direct relationship between these three and positive emotions. Now, positive emotions are the great emotions. Positive emotions are those of happiness and love and joy and vitality and energy and exuberance and enthusiasm and excitement and so on. Now, down at the other end, however, we have an attitude of irresponsibility. And what does that lead to? This is what shocked me so much when I first learned it. It leads to a lack of control. Is that to the degree to which we are irresponsible, we lose control. Our inner selves disintegrate and fragment. It also leads to a lack of freedom, because we no longer see ourselves as free agents choosing the direction of our own lives. We see ourselves as pawns, as victims, if you like, of external forces. And a lack of control and freedom leads to negative emotions. When I first began to understand this, I thought, well, yeah, but what about my parents, and what about my childhood, and what about my condition? I didn't have a very good job, and what about my friends? I had crummy friends, and what about my health, and what about the weather, and what about the economy? When I began to realize this, I began to realize that you put all that aside. If your highest aim, your highest goal is positive emotions of happiness, joy, freedom, enthusiasm, and so on, then you have to stop making excuses. Now, Carl Menninger, the great psychoanalyst, said a very interesting thing some years ago. He said that physical ailments are all different, caused by different bacteria, different viruses, and so on. He said, but mental illness is the same illness, simply spread along a spectrum from the least to the worst. And Thomas Szasz, the psychiatrist, said in his book, The Myth of Mental Illness, that there is no such thing as mental illness. There are merely varying degrees of irresponsibility. So when we say that an irresponsible person is not only negative, we say an irresponsible person is also mentally ill. A totally responsible person is mentally healthy. How does this affect you? Well, I know you want to advance as much as you can in life, or you wouldn't be going through the efforts of taking a program like this. There is a direct relationship between the amount of responsibility you accept for the results of your organization and the amount of power, influence, position, prestige, and status you will have in your work now and in the future. At the top of the graph of responsibility, we have people who accept total responsibility, and power and opportunity gravitates toward them. Down at the other end, we have no power or powerlessness, until you reach the extreme example of a person who's totally irresponsible, completely out of control, who has to be constrained in a straitjacket and locked up in a padded room for their own safety and for the safety of others. Completely powerless, completely without control or freedom. Now, every time we make a decision to be self-responsible, we move up on this graph. Every time we then make a decision to make excuses, we move down in this graph. So let's take it a little bit further, and let's talk about the relationship between negative emotions and irresponsibility so that you understand it perfectly clearly. And a perfect example is this. Imagine here is a tree. All right? Here's a tree, and here is the bushes. This is what is called the negative emotion tree. In the negative emotion tree grows the predominant negative emotions: fear, doubt. Many people have considered that self-doubt is the most destructive of all negative emotions, holds you back more than you can imagine. Also, hate is a negative emotion. Then there's envy. There's resentment. And then, of course, there's resentment's sister, guilt. These are all the big negative emotions. These are the ones that have led to Hit Parade for years. There's about 54 different negative emotions, but these are the top ones. If you take these negative emotions and you boil them all down, and you can put in your own favorite, by the way. Everybody has their own favorite negative emotion. Jealousy could be yours. Self-pity is a good, strong one that's doing well. But if you boil it down, you find that all negative emotions eventually boil down to anger, either inwardly expressed, that is where you make yourself sick, or outwardly expressed, that is where you make other people sick. And this negative emotion tree, if we just take a look at its structure, we find the negative emotion tree has a root system. Now, the root system is where the nutrients come from that keep the negative emotion growing and keep the fruit of the negative emotion growing and blossoming. We look at the root system, we say, what are the nutrients? What keeps negative emotions going? What are the fertilizer? What is it that you keep on the fire, if you like, or put into the ground? And we find that there's two things essential to keep negative emotions alive. The first is justification. Justification. That's merely telling yourself and anybody else who will listen why you are justified in having this emotion. And the other is what we call identification. Identification means taking things personally. That's why, of course, they suggest that a person who acts as their own lawyer has a fool for a client. Probably a person who acts as their own doctor has a fool for a patient, too. Because we become so personally identified with our own situation, and so do you, we take it so personally that we get all emotionally involved and wrapped up in it. So we find that it's not possible for you to be negative about anything for very long unless you can justify or have a reason for it and explain it to other people, or unless you can identify and take it personally. For instance, if somebody comes in from the parking lot and says, they just ran into a car in the parking lot, doesn't bother you at all because you don't identify with it. Now, if they said they just ran into a car in the parking lot and it's your car in the parking lot and the person's gone, now you can become extremely upset. Remember this, however, that we always choose these responses. I'll come back to this in a second. So how do we get rid of justification? How do we starve the root system of the negative emotion tree? The way that we get rid of justification is by becoming non-judgmental. In the Bible it says, judge not that ye be not judged. And since the Bible is, amongst many other things, a book of philosophy and metaphysics and how to live, being non-judgmental means that you just refrain from judging. Hold back from judging. Instead of casting a judgment that somebody is guilty of something, somebody has done something, just remain open and neutral. Just remaining neutral, and that's the key, stops the negative emotion from getting going. One of the things that we know about negative emotions, and I've studied them for years, is that negative emotions start off like a spark. And as they are fed, as we dwell upon them, as we justify them, as we become judgmental about the situation, they start to grow and grow and grow until they absolutely consume our minds. Now, with regard to identification, which is taking things personally, what we do is what is called, we disidentify. We objectify, or we again remain neutral. We try to keep it at arm's length. We say there is a problem, but I am not the problem. There is a difficulty, but the difficulty is not me, and we keep it at arm's length. So these two, once we begin to stop justifying and stop identifying or taking things personally, stop getting emotionally involved. Have you ever had the situation where somebody comes to you with a problem and you get so emotionally involved with their problem that you start to feel upset, and they go away and they don't have a problem anymore, and you're still there and you're upset? This is because we've taken it so personally. However, the key to getting rid of negative emotions, and this is the most important part of this, is the trunk. It's cutting down the trunk of the negative emotion tree. And the trunk of the negative emotion tree is blame. Blame is 99% of negative emotions. Now, it's very important to understand where negative emotions come from. Negative emotions come from inside you. Negative emotions are not contained in external situations. Negative emotions are not caused by other people or other situations. Negative emotions are caused by your response to other situations. Perfect example. Two people meet the same situation, a traffic jam, a rude waiter, whatever it happens to be, and one person gets all upset and uptight and angry, the other person lets it go off their back. Another example. The same person, 2 different days. One day they've had an argument or a flat tire, or they're late for work, they get into a traffic jam and they're angry and they're uptight. The next day, they leave with plenty of time, they had a lovely breakfast with their family, they got lots of time to get to work, they have a traffic jam, doesn't bother them at all. In both cases, it's an example of the negative emotion does not come from the situation. Is that you are always free to choose the quality of your emotional life. Is that you choose to become angry. Now understand this, nobody makes you feel anything. Nobody makes you feel angry. Nobody makes you feel tense. Nobody makes you feel upset. You always decide how you're going to feel, and then if you're not careful, you will fall into a negative habit pattern of blaming the other person. Blame is the core of all negative emotions. When you stop blaming, you cut down the negative emotion tree. You cut it off, you kill it, and all the negative emotions die simultaneously. It's almost exactly as if this negative emotion tree were a Christmas tree and it were plugged into the wall. And the negative emotions were Christmas tree lights. And you took this plug and you jerked it out of the wall, what would happen? Well, what would happen is that all the negative emotions, the lights, would go out simultaneously, just like that. How do you do this? You do this by using the law of substitution. Remember the law of substitution? It says that the conscious mind can only hold one thought at a time. It's the thought that the conscious mind holds that determines how the emotions will react, how the subconscious mind will react. Since it can only hold one thought at a time, what you do is you knock out the thought that is causing the negative emotion, the blame thought, and you replace it with this affirmation. I am responsible. I am responsible. I am responsible. This, in conjunction with I like myself, I am responsible, is the most powerful, positive affirmation you can use, because the instant that you say I am responsible, you exert complete control over your emotional life. The instant you say I am responsible, suddenly you are back in the driver's seat. You cannot say I am responsible and feel a negative emotion simultaneously. The one knocks the other one out of your conscious mind. And you can start off, for instance, each one of us has a situation that causes us a lot of aggravation. You have a situation, maybe a person, but every time you think about it, you get angry. Every time you think about it, you get cross or you get distracted. What you do is whenever you start to think about that situation, neutralize it by saying, I am responsible. Wait a minute, I am responsible. Is it a relationship? Who got yourself into the relationship? Did somebody put you there at gunpoint? Or did you get into it by yourself? Is it a job? Is it an investment? Is it a health problem of some kind? In every case, accept responsibility. Now, there's a big difference between acceptance and responsibility. Let me just write this up. It's responsibility versus blame. Responsibility versus blame. What is blame? Blame always looks backward toward the past. Blame looks toward the past, toward what cannot be done, toward what can't be changed. Responsibility always looks to the future. So people say, well, when you accept responsibility, isn't it the same as saying you're to blame? No. It's the same as saying that you are in charge of the quality of your thinking from this moment onward. So let us say that you come out to the parking lot and somebody's run into your car. Now you have two choices. You can become angry and upset and run around and scream and shout, or you can act in a responsible manner. You can do everything possible to trace the culprit, and other than that, you can live with it maturely. So responsibility always looks to the future. Responsibility always asks this question when faced with a problem. What can we do? Not who did it, but what can we do from here? Where do we go from here? What can we do? This is the question of the responsible person. We don't cry over spilt milk. We just say, all right, what's the solution? And we get on with the game. The irresponsible person always says, who did it? And he is obsessed with finding out who did it and then taking whatever blame there is and apportioning it so that everybody gets their fair share of the blame, which of course does nothing to resolve the difficulty. So the key to cutting down the negative emotion tree is using the axe and eliminating blaming. The day that you begin to eliminate blaming from your life is the day that your life starts to take off. Because the day that you start to eliminate blaming and negative emotions, suddenly most of the problems, most of the things that stand between you and the happiness you desire vanish. Why am I making such an emphasis on negative emotions? Well, let me make that clear for just a second. What I found, and this is what was staggering to me, because I've always been committed to realizing my potential as a human being, is that you cannot advance in life except to the degree to which you get rid of your negative emotions. You cannot make any progress. You cannot go any further than where you are right this minute except to the degree to which you leave your negative emotions behind. Now, by the way, with regard to the negative emotion that you have that's associated with another person or situation, it's difficult to accept responsibility. It's difficult to say, I am responsible initially, because you've been blaming that person for so long. So sometimes you have to say it with gritted teeth. You have to say, well, I am responsible. I am responsible. But the more you repeat this, I am responsible, I am responsible, I am responsible, it comes easier and easier. Eventually it gets to the point where as soon as you think of that person or situation, you can neutralize the thought by the law of substitution by saying, wait a minute, I am responsible. I am responsible. there's a beautiful line that you can use also in dealing with difficult people that goes back to self-esteem, and it also has to do with eliminating negative emotions. It says something like this: no matter what you say or do, I'm still a valuable and worthwhile person. Or, no matter what happens, I am still a valuable and worthwhile person. Or, no matter how this situation turns out, I am still a valuable and worthwhile person.